Well, good morning. Hey, it is good to be with you, and definitely excited for all of you students and faculty and administrators and all of the staff. It's going to be a great school year, and that is one of the reasons why we're kicking off this series, Under Pressure and Stressed Out, Crush-Proofing Your Life. Now, if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn with me to Luke 22. Now, we'll get to Luke 22 here in a little while. Now, this morning is an introduction, and I have disciplined myself so far over the last two gatherings. I have disciplined myself not to get ahead of myself, because you might sit through this introduction and you're like, that's all that's it. He didn't say anything. I'm going to say a lot of things, but you may be like, man, I needed a little bit more. I'm leaving you on the hook, because you got to come back over the next 9 weeks to learn everything that you need to learn around being under pressure and stressed out and crush-proofing your life. So we're going to get to Luke 22. That's going to be our anchor passage. That's where we are going to be for the next 9 weeks. Now, what I've done this particular weekend is work out at least my pressure and stress inventory for you to see, okay? So over the next several slides, I'm gonna kind of give you my pressure and stress inventory, not so that you feel for me, but you'll see why I'm going to do this later on in the service. But when I was thinking about pressure and stress, a couple at least thoughts came to my mind. One, I have the pressure and stress of competition. Like, I am a competitor. I hate to lose. How many people out there, you hate to lose? Like, yes, okay, all right. So you, my fellow competitor. So it doesn't even matter if it's Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger. Like, I've got to win. Now, this is my mom, by the way. So when I was playing my mom, I had the pressure. I got to beat her, but I was stressed because my other family members were in other carts and I could not see what they were doing, all right? I have to win. Well, I just want you to know I did beat my mama, okay? I did beat my mama. Now, but I love this picture because I'm like a kid in a candy, like I'm having the time of my life. My mom's like, and I remember, like, so no lie, like, because we go often, but my mom's like, what do I got to do again? I'm like, Mom, this is a gun, this is a trigger, that's the aliens, you're supposed to kill them, okay? And then halfway through the ride, what am I supposed to do again, Josh? I'm like, I ain't got time for you, woman. I'm trying to shoot these aliens myself, because I gotta win. So I got the pressure and stress of winning. Here's another one, and I'm doing it right now, but I actually create a book report every single week from the Bible, and I create a message around that book report, and every single weekend, usually 38 to 40 times a year, I come every weekend and I deliver it. So I have the pressure of studying God's Word. I have the pressure of writing a message. I have the pressure of delivering the message so that you would find it applicable to your life, meaningful to your life, but I also have the stress of actually how you received it. Because here's what I know about Americans: you've got an opinion about everything. So you might go, man, this was awesome, and you're like singing my praises, and then some of you're gonna go home and you're gonna get on your little phone and you're gonna go to Yelp, you're gonna go to Google, and you're gonna leave a bad review because it didn't mean anything to you, and you felt like it wasted your time. And so I have to deal with that stress of how people are going to take the message that I prepared. So I got public speaking pressure and stress. I got health stress. So this is my Whoop score. So people ask me all the time, what do you got on your right hand? It's called my Whoop band. It gives me data about my body and how my body is dealing with the pressures and stresses of life. Because here's the thing, I want to be healthy. So I have this pressure of being healthy. I also have this pressure of a half Ironman coming up in September, where I got to make sure that I have an aerobic engine that can go over 6 hours in one fell swoop that day. So I got the pressure of showing up and exercising. But then I also have the stress of what will my Whoop say in the morning? Will my Whoop say that my recovery is green? Will it say my recovery is yellow? Will it put my recovery in red? I also live with the stress of how my sleep score ended up. And there's times like this past Friday, Luke had a football game, and I leaned over to Joni. I'm like, my Whoop tells me I need to go to bed right now. She's like, well, you got another half. And so I got this stress, like I got to get in bed, I got to get a good score, because anyway, so my health, I have pressures and stresses when it comes to my health. Also maintaining your yard, okay, or maintaining your house. So I have the pressure of making sure I have green grass. Well, this doesn't look very green because I lived with the stress several months ago that our sprinkler system in our entire neighborhood, the water system kind of broke, and they had to repair that water that is used on or repair the system where the water came out to water your lawn. And I'm like, well, I got this stress because I have no control over that, but I have the pressure of maintaining a green yard. Well, I also have pressure and stress over a book. So over a year ago, I had a publisher. They contacted me and said, hey, we would love to publish with you. And so now I have the pressure of actually writing a book, meeting deadlines, making sure it is good. But then I also have the stress of, I wonder how it's doing. I wonder how people are reacting and responding to what they are reading. The stress of how many copies did it sell? Will they want me to do another book? So pressures and stresses. But here's another one. This is the gospel ecosystem here at Northland. So we have Northland Church. As many of you know, we own a separate 501c3, Mercy Road. And then we have what we call commerce entities that they have their own budget and their sustainable systems and structures to fund that thing so that they can scale. So you have all of these commerce entities like our cooperative school, bookstore, cafe, events and rentals, John Melvin College, which starts next weekend, and then the Institute of Sports for Missional Advancement and our counseling center. Between this entire gospel ecosystem, we serve around 4,000 people every single week. And in these three domains, we have over 150 staff. So every week, I have the pressure of leading this gospel ecosystem, to make sure that I am leading well, to make sure that I am faithfully following the Lord, making sure I have a life full of integrity. And then I have the stress and the stresses of managing all of the people and managing the people underneath them to the tune of 150 plus staff. And here's what I know about people. Where two or more are gathered, there's drama. So you come up on Monday, I wonder what happened this weekend. You show up on Wednesday, I wonder what happened on Tuesday. And so you're constantly dealing with issues that are happening. And then when you look at the 250,000 square feet that we oversee, that we run here, I mean, there are a lot of things that can happen within those facilities. So you talk about pressures and stresses. And then if that wasn't enough, I actually have a family. And I have the pressures of showing up and making sure I love my wife like Christ loved the church. I want to make sure that I love my children well, and that I honor the Lord by raising them under the lordship of Christ. So I got these pressures, but as you can see, they're getting older. And so I got stresses because 2 out of 3 of them are driving. And so we got them on Life 360. We can see how fast they go. And we're like, whoa, why are you going 96 miles an hour? There ain't no Jeff Gordon, all right? You ain't on the racetrack. Like you're not at the Daytona Speedway. And so we're stressing over our children of when they're leaving the house and they are driving. And even this past week and weekend, Joni and I, we dropped off Elliot at FSU. Now, Caleb spoiled us because he went to UCF and stayed at home, which I'm grateful for. I get to see his smiling face most days. But remember, my Whoop score tells me to get in bed, and so sometimes I'm in bed before he comes home. But nevertheless, we dropped Ellie off at FSU. And Joni and I, we were headed back on Friday, and I told Joni, I said, let this sink in, baby. We dropped our baby girl off, at one of the FSU dorms, and we did not meet another adult. Like all we saw was other 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. We met no other adult that said, hey, your baby girl is in good hands. I know what some of you are saying. Well, if she's 18, she's an adult. I'm going to tell you, listen, she might be an adult, but she doesn't do really well at adulting in a lot of areas. So I get a little worried about her. And so there were no other adults there that said, hey, we're going to take care of your baby girl. So me as daddy, I'm stressing out. I left my baby girl at Florida State. The only calming presence that I have in my life is that her dorm is next to the police station. It was great. So she just walked right over. So I take this pressure and stress inventory to show you, hey, this is a series that I need. But here's what I do know is that if I need it, because you have all of these areas too in your life, so if I need it, guess what? You need it as well. So what does pressure actually mean? Well, here are some dictionary definitions of pressure. Pressure can be the burden of physical or mental distress. So what you'll see in these definitions is that there is a relationship between pressure and stress. So the burden of physical or mental distress. It can also be the constraint of circumstance, the weight of social or economic imposition. Something's being imposed on you. And then the stress or urgencies of matters that are actually demanding your attention. Pressure can be the physical force applied straight down onto a surface divided by the areas of that surface. So pressure is something that you are feeling. It's a weight, it's a burden that you are feeling. Now, here are some definitions of stress. Stress can be the constraining force of influence, such as a physical, chemical, mental, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension. Okay, so there's this constraining force, though, that's causing now some kind of tension in your life. And it could also mean a force exerted when one body or body part presses on, pulls on, pushes against, or tends to compress or twist another body or body part. So once again, you can see these definitions of pressure and stress. You're like, man, they're related. So yeah, you could call them siblings. You could call them cousins. They do interact with one another, but they are two distinct terms. Now, for our purposes in this series, here are the working definitions of both pressure and stress. So this is how I'm going to be using them. So pressure is the demand to perform. So pressure is the demand to perform when something you care about is at stake. So I care about my family, I care about how my kids are turning out, and so I care about them. So the demand to perform as a dad, that's what I care about. It is at stake, or when something expected of you is at stake. So my wife, she has a lot of expectations for me. She has a lot of demands for me to perform. And so because she cares about it and I care about her, I have the pressure of meeting her expectations, her demands, okay? Stress is the emotional, mental, and physical strain of dealing with situations, circumstances, environments beyond your control or your limited control. So pressure is the demand to perform. Stress is the strain of dealing with situations that are beyond your control or your limited control. Pressure, perform, stress, strain. Pressure, perform, stress, strain. Now, here are at least some areas of pressure. Now, this list is not exhaustive, but here are some areas of pressure. Giving a talk. So if I asked you that you got to give a presentation next weekend, you've got to come up with it, you got to write it. There's the pressure that you've got to perform in creating and then giving that talk. There's the pressure being a good spouse, good parent, taking a test. So all of you students, who stood up, we pray for you because you have the pressure of taking tests. You have the pressure of these assignments that are given to you. Now, growing up, my mom, she never put the pressure on us of making straight A's, but she wanted us to make A's and B's. And even when we made B's, she would ask, why'd you make a B? And I'm like, I don't know. You're the teacher. You ought to ask. You ought to tell me. And she really was. She was my marketing and economic teacher. So anyways, it was crazy having your mom as a teacher. But anyway, so if you didn't make straight A's, you at least had to say, hey, why'd you make a B? And then in sports, playing a championship or playing a game. So if you play basketball or baseball or football or golf or lacrosse, like you have the pressure to perform. If you're in business, hitting big, hairy, audacious goals. If you have these BHAGs, that's pressure to perform. WIGs are wildly important goals. KPIs, key performance indicators. So if you're in business and you have BHAGs, WIGs, or KPIs, you have the pressure to perform. And then if you are interviewing for a job, you got the pressure to perform. Being rich or wealthy. Listen, when it comes to being poor, you ain't got no pressure about being poor, okay? You don't have to do a thing in the world to be poor. But if you want to be rich or wealthy and you put that on you, you have the demand to perform, okay? So those are areas of pressure. Now, these are areas of stress. So financial instability. Many Americans live paycheck to paycheck, which means that they live in financial instability. And so there's this stress of this uncertainty that they are dealing with of living month to month, paycheck to paycheck. If you lose your job, you have the stress of what am I going to do? You have the stress of I wonder who's going to hire me. Political chaos, toxic environment. So if you work in a business, if you work for an organization that has a toxic environment and you're not in leadership and you can't do anything about it, you got to live in that environment and it might create stress. Family dysfunction creates stress. Wayward kids, unexpected expenses. If you're betrayed by a family member or a friend, that creates stress. If you're caring for aging parents, that creates stress. So these are areas in life where we experience stress. So those are areas. Now, what about symptoms? How do you know that you are undergoing pressure? How do you know that you are experiencing stress? Well, pressure, here are some of the symptoms. You cannot breathe. So I remember growing up and playing golf competitively, I always hated the first tee. They call it the first tee jitters because everybody's watching you. And so I'm like having a hard time breathing because I have the pressure of stepping up in front of everybody and hitting the shot down the middle into the fairway. And so I felt it hard to breathe. Another symptom of pressure is increased heart rate. So part of the can't breathe is that your heart rate is increasing and you're having a hard time calming down because you are feeling the weight of the performance that you are asked to do. Another one is hot flashes and sweat. Now, I just want you to know I sweat up here, but it's not because I have pressure. It's because this is a hot box that you have all of these lights pouring down on me and I sweat. Okay, so I just want you to know I'm not sweating under pressure. I'm sweating under the lights, okay? But if you are under pressure and you have sweaty palms, like if you are on a date and you remember having sweaty palms, it means that you wanted the date to go well because you liked the person you were on a date and you had these sweaty palms and hot flashes. Other symptoms of pressure is worry and concern, nervous and anxious, your muscles tighten, which is part of the reason why the first tee jitters, everything constricts and it's hard for you to have a nice fluid swing. And then even adrenaline releases. And so you're just your body's kind of out of control when you have the weight of pressure. So those are symptoms of pressure. Here are symptoms of stress. Prolonged cortisol activity. This basically means you cannot turn off your brain. So when you go to bed and you're tired, you're like worn out, but you sit there and your mind continues to race and you think about your kids, you think about finances, you think about your parents, you have all of these things that you're thinking about. What that mainly means is that you cannot shut your brain off because you are under so much stress in what your mind is racing and thinking about. Then what we see another symptom is a sleep disruption, is that you just cannot sleep because, again, you cannot turn your mind off. Stress, symptoms of stress can be headaches, brain fog, irritability. Some of you, here's what you need to realize, is that you're really not mad at your spouse. You're just irritated at life and all of the stress that you are under, but you're taking it out on your spouse. You're taking it out on your kids. You're taking it out on your coworkers because you're irritable. Emotional volatility. You're overwhelmed. You have persistent muscle tension. You have withdrawal and isolation tendencies because when you are under stress, you don't want to be around anybody. You shut down. This is what happens in my own life, is that when I'm under stress, I tend to shut down emotionally and I want to just withdraw. And then stomach problems. Some of you, the reason why you don't eat is because you're under stress. And you've not been able to label it. I'm just stressed out of what other people think, of what's going to happen here, where am I going to go here? And so you deal with these stomach problems of whether or not wanting to eat, not being hungry, or when you eat, your stomach is all in knots and it's hurting because you are under stress. So we got the areas of pressure and stress. We got the symptoms of pressure and stress. Well, what are the effects? How does it affect us? Pressure and stress. Well, here are the effects of pressure. It impairs performance. Going back to the first tee jitters, it was what they call them in golf, is that I know how to hit the ball straight. But when I'm under pressure and I'm trying to do it with everybody and I cannot calm my heart rate down and my muscles are restricted, it impairs my ability to perform what I know what I can do. Same thing in business, same thing in your marriage. If you are under pressure, it can impair your performance. If you feel the weight of that pressure, it can actually drain your energy, where it just absolutely flat wears you out. It disrupts your thinking and creativity. So there have been times when I'm speaking, because of the pressure, there are times I feel like, okay, I know that word, but I can't get it out because it impairs the pressure of delivering a good message that you go, man, that was meaningful. Sometimes it overwhelms me and I can't get the words out because my brain has been so restricted by the weight of the pressure. And so it disrupts my thinking and creativity. Pressure triggers fight or flight mode. It limits connection because you can't enjoy the moment, which then leads to the robbing of joy of doing what you care about. So those are effects of pressure. What about stress? Here are the effects of stress. It diminishes the capacity for flourishing. So if you are under stress, immense stress, then you can't enjoy life. You cannot fulfill the purpose to which you have been created because the weight of stress has become too much in your life. Stress actually drowns out rational, logical thought. That's one of the reasons why they tell you do not make any major decision in your life when you're undergoing a major transition, because that major transition has triggered stress in your life and you do not need to make any big decisions in your life because it is drowned out, that stress has drowned out rational and logical thought. Stress can cause physical and bodily harm. It can keep your body on high alert where your body never calms down, and it can actually impede resilience. And what that means is that you just want to throw in the towel. I'm done. I'm done on this marriage. Like I can't handle the stress anymore. I'm done at this job. I can't handle the stress anymore. Some people, I can't handle the stress of life anymore. I'm done. And so it completely impedes their ability to be resilient. Now, like I said, there's differences between pressure and stress, but I want you to see how they work together. So pressure, it's the demand to perform. You have the agency where you get to do it. You are performing, you are owning the action. And then there are these expectations of this outcome. But then stress is more around the situation, the circumstances. You have limited or no control over what's happening. So therefore there's this uncertainty. This uncertainty causes you strain. Then you got to cope with them and you still want the outcome. Now, here's what can happen though, is stress can create pressure and pressure can create stress. Let me explain. So if you have the stress of the uncertainty of your finances, let's say you've lost your job and your finances are uncertain, but you actually have a job interview. So the stress of the uncertainty of your finances actually feeds the pressure that I've got to get this job. So stress and pressure work in tandem in that example. And then let's say you have the pressure. There's this demand. Okay, so just like parenting, so I have this demand to raise my children under the lordship of Christ, but because I care about them, I have the stress of the things that I cannot control. I cannot control when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, who their friends are going to be or where they're going. You're like, yeah, you can. Well, no, listen, I'm going to give them freedom as they are now adulting, and so therefore there's this stress that I cannot fully control their lives anymore. And so the pressure to parent well, but also the stress of, man, I wonder how they're doing adulting, okay? So this is where pressure and stress work in tandem. Now, when you put it all together and you have pressure and you have the pressures of life and you have the stresses of life, you are in the middle, okay? And so here's what can happen. The pressures and the stresses in life now are coming on you, and that's where you can get crushed by the pressures and the stresses of life. If you don't know how to deal with them, how to cope with all of them, because that's what's happening in our life right now. We have so many pressures and stresses coming at us, which is one of the reasons why many of you feel crushed by the weight of life. Because of all these pressures and stresses coming at you. And here's what I know about Americans. You got it. You got the pressure and the stresses. So work, 50% of you, half of you in this room, you have significant daily stress in your job. You deal with daily significant stress in your job. And then 55% say that deadlines are a source of workplace stress. So you got a presentation, you got research, you got to close a deal, whatever it may be. So over half of you say, man, the deadlines that I work with every single day or week, man, those are significant stressors in my life. Student athletes, 91% of high school athletes experience sports-related stress. Why? Because here's the thing, they want to perform, they want to do well, they want to get in the game, they get in the game, they strike out, the coaches benches them, and so they have this stress the next time they get up that if I don't hit the ball, I'm going to be benched. Parents, 97% of us experience parenting-related stress in the past month. Mine's the last 24 hours. 48% of parents say most days their stress is completely overwhelming. Those are just a few of the research statistics that I pulled. So here's what I know. Every single one of us in this room, we're dealing with pressures and stresses in our life. Now here's what I'm gonna show you in the next slide. I'm gonna show you the main thesis. Many times, or most of the time, I give you a main point for that particular message. But what I'm giving you this morning is the entire thesis of the series. So this is the main thesis that you and I need to keep in mind as we unpack this series. And here it is. Pressure and stress can crush you and lead to chaos, or pressure and stress can be used to conform you for God's commission or God's mission. You really don't have any in between. Pressure and stress, they can crush you, that leads to chaos. So let me be honest. Some of you feel like your life is chaotic. And the reason why it's chaotic is because you are being crushed by the weight of pressure and stress in your life. Or pressure and stress can actually be used to conform you and me more into the image of Jesus and therefore use us to be more effective for God's mission in the world. That he can actually redeem. God can redeem the pressures and stresses of our life. And that's what we're going to be tackling in this series. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to now move to the anchor passage in Luke 22. Now, here's what's so important about Luke 22. It is the most intense moment in human history. It is the most intense moment in human history. Now, why would it be the most intense moment in human history? Well, because when Adam and Eve sinned and they disobeyed God, they fractured all of humanity. That means they damaged the image of God on our life. We were not going to function the way God had wanted us to function. And as a result of their sin, they separated us from God, human beings from God. But God was not going to leave us in our dysfunction. God was not going to leave us in our brokenness. God was not going to leave us in our separation. God was going to redeem us. But what it was going to take for God to redeem us was his one and only Son, because, as we saw last week, the wage of sin is death. So God's one and only Son would have to die for sinners in order for them to be repaired and reconciled to God. So in Luke 22 is the most intense moment in human history because everything was moving to this point where Jesus would be betrayed, Jesus would be arrested, Jesus would be sentenced, and then Jesus would be crucified for the sin of the world. So Luke 22 is the most pressure-packed, intense, stressful moment in all of human history because it is the climax of human history whereby the Son of God gave himself for you and me. And we're going to do a deep dive in this passage over the next 9 weeks. But here's what I'm going to do right now. This is where the discipline kicks in. I'm going to read through this passage, and I'm just going to highlight the people and the generic. I'm just going to generically label stress and pressure. I'm not going to dive into the stress and pressure yet. That's what the series is going to be about. I'm just going to show you the pressure-packed, stressful, intense moment in all of human history and how every single person is dealing with pressures and stresses. Okay, so here we go. Luke chapter 22, verse 1 through 5. These words are written by Luke, the physician. Now, the festival of unleavened bread called the Passover was approaching, and the chief priest and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus. So they have this pressure that I got to get rid of Jesus. Now we're not diving into why they're trying to get rid of Jesus, but now they got this pressure to perform to get rid of Jesus. But they also have the pressure and stress because they were afraid of the people. So they want to get rid of Jesus, but there's this fear that they have of the people because he's popular. Jesus is popular among the people. So they got to look for an opportune time to get rid of Jesus so that the people don't turn on them. Talk about pressure and stress. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12, and Judas went to the chief priest and the officers of the temple guard and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. So why in the world? Like, Judas has been with Jesus for years now. What's gone on in his life to create the pressures and the stresses that he wants to eliminate? He wants to betray Jesus. Then we read, well, they, the chief priests and the officers, were delighted and agreed to give him, money. Now you add money into the equation. So just now with the chief priests, the teachers of the law, Judas, we got pressure and stress. But then we go on in this passage. When the hour, not just a hour, but when the hour, what's the hour? Just hang on, don't get ahead of yourself just yet. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, And he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. So the hour means the suffering of Jesus has now come. So if you could imagine, you're one of the disciples, you're sitting there with Jesus, you've been with him now for several years, and he's told you that the Son of Man must suffer, must give his life, must die, must be buried, but 3 days later rise from the dead. He's taught us this, he's taught his disciples this, but now he's saying this is the last supper before I suffer, the time has come. Could you imagine the stress of the disciples? Well, what does this look like? How will this unfold? What do we need to do? So after taking the cup, Jesus gave thanks and said, take this and divide it among you, for I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. Okay, so if you're thinking, again, as disciples, like, okay, when's the kingdom of God going to come? He's going to suffer. This is the last meal, but we're gonna have another drink with him when all of this is done in the kingdom. But when is that going to happen? And then he took bread, gave thanks and broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Remember, stress is caused by circumstances and situations that are beyond our control or our limited control. And so when you're not fully understanding, so think about it, you're in a class, let's say you're in chemistry or you're in calculus, and the teacher is telling you about calculus, the teacher is telling you about chemistry, and you're like, I don't understand. Here's what happens. You get stressed out. This is one of the scenes that I do appreciate about The Chosen, is because Jesus is telling his disciples this, but they're really confused. And see, when you're really confused and you're certain, and you know that there's this kind of suffering, there's something gloomy that's awaiting, you begin to panic. So we got stress with the disciples. Now, in the same way, after the supper, Jesus took the cup, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table. The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed, but woe to that man who betrays him. Okay, Jesus is telling the disciples, last meal, I'm going to suffer. The hour is here. And then he begins to do the Passover supper with them, confused. And then he tells them, hey, by the way, one of you will betray me. Whoa. Think about the stress. And now they're trying to figure out, Bartholomew, is that you? I saw how you were looking at Jesus. Thomas, what about you? I've overheard some of the things that you've been saying. Like, who's going to betray him? Now they got the stress. They're trying to figure out who is the one who's going to betray the Messiah. So they begin to question among themselves which of them it might be who would do this. And then, oh my gosh, then a dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be greatest. This is so funny. They got this pressure that suffering's coming, trying to make sense of what Jesus is teaching them, then trying to ascertain who's the betrayer, and then they move to a dispute about, hey, I'm greater than you. And Peter's like, listen, I'm greater than all of you, man. Listen, I'm his best friend. And then John's like, well, hey, time out. I'm the beloved, man. He doesn't love you the way he loves me. I mean, he's told me how much he loves me. I mean, so now there's this dispute because they're worried, they're stressed out, they're anxious over who is the greatest. Then there's more. So after supper, here's what Jesus says, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. Oh my gosh. It's not enough for him to suffer, not enough that we don't understand what he's saying, not enough to figure out who is the betrayer, not enough to figure out who is the greatest, but now you're telling me Satan has entered the picture and now he's asking to sift us violently like wheat? Well, how is that going to happen? What does that look like? What do we need to do? Most intense moment in all of human history. And then Jesus went out, as usual, to the Mount of Olives. So I highlight that because as I was reading Luke devotionally last year, this is where the series was birthed. The Mount of Olives was actually an olive press. It's where they would go and pick olives, and that's where they would crush olives to make olive oil. See, what you're seeing in the most intense moment in all of human history, converging on the Mount of Olives, where the mounting pressure of all human history is converging. And so Jesus, he went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." Hey, I need you to perform. I need you to perform. Hey, wake up, guys. Hey, listen, hey, everything that I've just basically told you, I know that you're feeling the weight, but I need you to feel the pressure now because I need you to stay awake. I need you to pray so that you don't fall into temptation. Now, some of you are like, well, what's the temptations? You got to wait for that, okay? That's why my discipline's kicking in right here. But he's wanting them to perform faithfully and praying so that they may not fall into temptation. Now, Jesus withdrew a stone throws beyond them. He knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me." So Jesus knows that the hour has come. The moment of suffering has come. But here's what he's asking is that, God, listen, I know that this is the performance, but hey, listen, if there's any other way, would you take this cup of suffering from me? Like the pressure is really weighty. If there's any other way, can you take this cup from me? But then he says, yet not my will, yours be done. And then an angel from heaven appeared to him, and what did the angel do? Strengthen him. Remember pressure? One of the effects of pressure is that it can drain you. Well, here we're seeing the Son of God, fully man, fully God. His energy is being drained from him because of the weight of the cup, and the angel comes and strengthens him. Then, and being in anguish, I mean, I want you being in anguish. There's this pressure in his life. He prayed more earnestly. And his sweat was like drops of blood. It's actually a medical condition. When someone is under immense pressure, when someone is under immense stress, there's these blood vessels that can burst, and remember, an effect is sweating. So Jesus is sweating from the pressure and the stress, so much so that blood vessels are bursting and he's sweating drops of blood. Talk about stress, talk about pressure, the Son of God. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. Now, this is so important. This is one of the reasons why we have multiple gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Luke was a medical doctor by trade. So when he's writing this passage, he is noting medical conditions in their life from the pressure and the stress that they are under. So we have the disciples, they were asked to pray so that they may not fall into temptation. Well, they have fallen asleep, exhausted from sorrow. They have been completely drained, and they have fallen asleep based upon the pressure that Jesus put on them to pray and be alert. And then Jesus comes to them and says, why are you sleeping? He asks them, get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. Now, here's what I want to give you. I'm not going to spend long, but I'm going to give you 3 quick principles. And again, very elementary. Here they are. Number one. Principle 1, pressure and stress are a part of life. You're welcome. You're like, I came all this way for you to tell us that? Yeah, I'm sorry. But here's what I actually want to show you, though, is that in Israel's history, major figures experienced stress and pressure. Let me give you the first one. You know these people, Adam and Eve. So in Genesis 3, now the serpent said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, well, we may eat from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die. Satan says, you will not certainly die, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. The devil came to tempt Eve, and in the temptation caused stress. This uncertainty that God is not who he says he is. This uncertainty that if you do this, your life will be better. And under stress, Eve ate what God told them not to eat. So it's the garden of stress, because what we see in Luke 22, Jesus, he's on the Mount of Olives, but at the base of the Mount of Olives is the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus is in the garden under stress. Adam and Eve, they were in the Garden of Eden under stress. But then we also see the mountain of pressure, because the Mount of Olives. But we see in Israel's past where King David and King Solomon also had an experience on the Mount of Olives. Well, David, here's what we read in 2 Samuel 15. But David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered and he was barefoot. All the people with him covered their heads too and were weeping as they went up. Here's what you need to know, is that David's son Absalom has rebelled against his father and thus the king. He has assumed the throne. He has ran David out of town, and David now is on the Mount of Olives grieving and weeping and seeking the Lord, because now he is under immense pressure. What's the king going to do with his son? And he's going to seek the Lord under pressure. But then Solomon, his son, here's what we read in 1 Kings 11. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Here's what's going on here. So kings would have this pressure of maintaining peace. And one of the ways that they would maintain peace is that they would enter into alliances with other nations. And one of the ways they would enter into alliances would be through marriage. Well, God had told Israel that you shall not marry foreign women because they will lead your heart astray. Well, here, the pressure of peace is so much for Solomon. He's not going to listen to the commands of God. He's going to do the things, and he's going to do what the world does, and he's going to enter into these alliances with these foreign women. Well, then he has the pressure now to perform what these foreign women, now his wives, want him to do. They do not worship Yahweh. They worship other gods. And so now there's this pressure on Solomon to perform for his women, his wives. And as a result, on the Mount of Olives, he creates altars to other gods so that his foreign wives can worship them. Talk about pressure, the mountain of pressure. So what I want us to know is every single human being from Adam and Eve experienced stress and experienced pressure. Principle number 2, if you experience pressure and stress, here's the truth. It actually means you care. It actually means you care. So if you have stress and pressure of finances, it means you care about finances. So I want to show you this, because when you deal with the pressure and the stresses, it just means that you care about work and expectations and finances and family. You care about the decisions. You care about future. You care about the uncertainty. You care about the relationships. You care. It just means you care, and that's a good thing. So students, because your parents stress about you, guess what that means? They care about you. So that's principle number 2. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, duh. I told you it's elementary. Now, we're going to move to middle school and high school with the last principle. Here it is. Number 3. Pressure and stress squeeze you and reveal what's in you. Pressure and stress, part of life. Pressure and stress actually means you care, but pressure and stress actually squeeze you and reveal what's in you. So here's what it reveals. It reveals what you care about. It also reveals why you care. So this is where you've got to put your thinking cap on. If you care about finances, you've got to ask yourself, why do I care about finances? Do I care about finances because I don't want to be poor like my parents? Do I care about finances because I just want to have a stable lifestyle? Do I care about finances because I want to be a good steward of the Lord's money? Why do you care about finances? Why do you care about dating? Do you care about dating because you don't want to be alone? Do you care about dating because you're trying to find your helpmate? Why do you care about dating? If you care about your marriage, why do you care about your marriage? Is because I don't want to get divorced like my parents. I don't want to have that on my resume. I don't want to get divorced. I care about my marriage because I want to honor God. Like, why do you care? See, that's where you've got to discover and discern why you care about those areas of pressure and stress. And then what's in you, how do you cope? What's in you will determine how you cope and deal with the threat, the pressure and stress pose to what you care about. Like, so I care about doing a good job up here, but why do I care? Do I care because I want to tickle your ears and please you? I can promise you that ain't the answer. But I had to do deep work in my own life. No lie, please hear me. I had to do deep work in my own life over the last decade so that when I come and there is pressure because I care, I'm not crushed by the pressure that you put on me. That's deep work. Now, I'm landing the plane and you're like, hallelujah. But I'm going to give you homework because remember, we just graduated to middle school and high school, okay? So here's your homework. Y'all ready for your homework? Ready or not? Here it comes. Number 1, I need you to take a pressure and stress inventory. So I did this for you in my own life, okay? That's why I spent a little time creating that pressure and stress inventory in my own life because here's what I'm asking you to do, homework, you need to take a pressure and stress inventory. So you need to list out all the pressures and stresses that you are dealing with right now in your life. List them out. I got a question. How many of you will actually do that? Please raise your hand. Okay, great. For those of you who don't, undoubtedly you are crushing it. Praise God. All right. But you need to list out. And then second, this is where it's going to take a little time, okay? Discern and discover. When you experience these pressures and stresses, why do you care so much? You need to write it out. Why do I care about finances? Why do I care about my children? Why do I care about my spouse? Why do I care about my job? Why do I care about my aging parents? Why do I care? You need to list out why, okay? That's your 2 elements of homework, okay? That's your homework assignments. But then I got an in-class assignment right here, right now. Here it is. You're going to take your little phone, you're going to tap that seat tag in front of you, and then you're going to choose the poll. Because I want to see how you are handling the pressures and stresses in your life. You're going to give yourself a grade right now. Now, we're not going to know that it's you. You're just going to be a number and you're going to give us a percentage. And this is going to help me build out the series so that I know how you have graded yourself. So if you choose 1, now if you don't want to tap a seat tag, you can actually get on your message and you can text the word stress. Make sure you spell stress right. STRESS to 97,000, okay? But you can tap that seat tag and pick it, okay? Here's how you're gonna grade yourself. Flourishing, you're like, man, I'm kicking butt and taking names. Pressure, what? You're like really, you're knocking it out of the park and how you're handling the pressures and stresses in your life. Number 2, if you grade yourself as a 2, that means you're doing well. I'm handling most things. I'm handling most pressures, most stresses pretty well in my life. Sure, can I grow? But I'm doing pretty well. Number 3 is that you would say, I'm surviving. There's good days, there's bad days. It just depends on what my whoop says. I'm just playing, yeah, but you know what I mean. Surviving. Number 4, overwhelmed. I'm struggling with carrying everything right now. Oh my gosh, I feel like a failure. I don't know what to do. I'm just struggling. That's a 4. Number 5, you're like drowning. I'm really getting to a point where I want to throw in the towel. Like I cannot process. I can't turn off my brain. My chest always feels heavy with the pressures that I'm dealing with. I'm drowning. So you take that test, grade yourself, and it will help us continue to develop the series as we move forward. All right, will you stand with me as we are sent out next week? Let me tell you where we're going so that I won't create stress in your life, okay? So over the next several weeks, we're going to look at the chief priests, teachers of the law, Judas, the disciples, and we're even going to look at the thief on the cross, and we're going to look at 3 big categories, how most human beings handle pressure and stress. Then we will spend 4 weeks on looking at how Jesus handled the pressures and the stresses, and then we'll conclude about how Paul writes how if we are in Jesus, we won't be crushed by the pressures and the stresses of life. So that's where we're going, and I am super, super excited about how God's going to use this to truly, hopefully, prayerfully transform your life and how you look at pressures and stresses.